Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio with another solo mode review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the solo mode for Roam and Roll from designers David Turtzi and Nick Shaw and coming from PSC Games. Roam and Roll is a roll and write game set in ancient Rome. Let's head over to the table, I'll show you the differences in the solo game to the multiplayer game, then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, here we see a sample solo setup for Roam and Roll. In this game, you are playing against a virtual opponent, Seneca, and Seneca's going to have his own color pen. I'm playing as blue in this case, and Seneca would be playing as orange. Seneca is not going to get everything that a regular player would. They're not going to get their own player board, for example, and they're not going to get an overseer that starts here in Rome. They are going to have I believe it's a foreman, I can't remember what they're called, but basically a blocking player here. They start on the religious building, in this case the shrine. I just showed the recommended first game setup of the different buildings out here and the god cards as well. So the only things that are specific to the solo game is this deck of cards, and this is Seneca's AI deck, and this has been set up a particular way that is explained in the rule book, but basically you're seeding the deck in such a way that particular cards are in the bottom part of the deck. Otherwise, it's set up as a two-player game. It's on the two-player side of the board. You have the dice distribution for a two-player game, and Seneca starts with randomly one of the god's favorite cards. It just turned out to be Jupiter in this case. Also, they start out as the consul, meaning that they'll go first, and that's going to switch back and forth by the round as it normally would. I'm not going to go into a full rules overview. If you want to see how the multiplayer game works, you could take a look at Tom's review. I'll link that in the description of this video. But just to give you an idea on how things change in the solo game. At the beginning of the round, you're going to roll your dice, have your dice pool set up for you here. You're going to take the top two cards of Seneca's deck, and you're going to place them face down, okay? And this is going to help you choose which of the dice that Seneca is going to draft. So you roll a d6 for the first die they're going to draft looking at the left card. And so if you roll an even number, they're going to choose a yellow die. If you roll an odd number, they're going to choose a red die. So let's see what we roll here. So it's an even number. They're rolling a 2. So they're going to take a yellow. In this case, they have 2 yellow dice. So you're going to look at the number rolled, which is 2. If either of these were the yellow 2, then Seneca would draft that dice. But since they're not, you move up 3, 4, 5. So they're going to take that die. Okay? Now I would have a choice of any of these dice left over here. Let's say that I'm going to choose, I don't know, I'll choose this die. Okay? Then you look at this card and you do the same thing. They rolled an odd number this time, so they're going to go yellow. Well, yellow is not available because both yellow dice were taken. And so in that case, what you're going to do is take a look at the color on the other half of the card, and that is blue. All right. And so a blue 5, we don't have a blue 5, but we have a blue 6. So they're going to take that blue 6, and then I could draft whatever die I want. Let's say I chose this die, and then this die would not be chosen. Okay, that's how the dice drafting works. They're going to always choose their 2 dice based off of what they roll on the d6 and the backs of the cards, and you'll choose whatever you can with what's left. And so then what you're going to do is you're going to flip over the first card if they go first, and there's going to be a number of different actions that could potentially be on the card. In this case, it says construct and rubble. So what you're going to do is move their meeple here to the highest urban building. That's what the H is. If there was an L, you'd go to the lowest urban building, okay? So right now we've got the market, which is an urban 2, and the villa, which is an urban 4. So it's going to move to the villa there, meaning that I couldn't go to that. I couldn't build the villa unless I had an architect action. Then it's going to draw some rubble in Aventinus, okay? So you would look on the board here, and Aventinus is here, and it's going to draw rubble in that shape. And you can put it in any place that fulfills that shape only on that hill. So in this case, it has to be a 3x1. I could put it anywhere within this hill that's solely within the hill. I couldn't make it go over into marshland or into Palatinus here. I'm going to butcher these names. I apologize. So let's say that I went ahead and put the rubble there. I would use their pen, their color pen, and draw that shape in with the rubble. So then I could take my actions. Let's say that, and I'm not going to use these dice, I'm just going to kind of show you some examples. Let's say that I had built maybe an engineering post, and I'd built it here next to this rubble, okay? When you build one of your buildings next to rubble, you can turn it into a park, which you draw these little pluses on there, and this is now a park. And when you build a park, you get a senator. So that's one way that you can get senators, is by building next to rubble and changing it into a park. So we've seen some of the actions here. They can construct, they get rubble, they construct again. We have a lot of construct actions. They can expand, which is going to be building the roads basically in the different actions here. I'm just going to go through all of these, okay? So they're going to renovate the first available road closest to Rome in the region with the fewest roads renovated. Well, right now there are no roads renovated. So any one of these could be applicable. In that case, they're going to go in priority order. They're going to go with jewelry first. So they would go ahead and renovate that road right there with an expand action. There's also a conquer action, okay? Within these cards, there are conquer. There's one, a conquer action, okay? And in conquering, they're obviously going to do what you do, which is trying to conquer these areas within these settlements outside of Rome. So they conquer the next available settlement in the region with the fewest settlements currently conquered. So very similar to the expanding. Now, I started the game with Praefectus here, which means that I had already had a conquered region in Hispania. So they wouldn't go there. They would look at these three, and again, going in priority order, they would go ahead and check that off. So they're going to be taking actions that are very similar to what you would normally take, but with some slight differences and some priority lists when you get into situations where 2 or 3 potentially things could apply, okay? So you go back and forth, switching over with the proconsul. You're taking your actions as normal. The Seneca is taking their actions as normal. How do these Nero cards get taken? Well, they get taken based on these wax seals that you see on these cards, okay? And so depending upon the difficulty that you choose at the beginning of the game, after a certain number of these wax seals have been revealed, so in this case, if they had taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they'd have 6 of these showing already. You, after a certain number, and I'm going to show you here in the rule book just so you can kind of see, if you're in normal, after 10, 13, 15, and 16, they would take whatever the next highest Nero card that is left, depending on any that you may have taken. And so if you go into easy mode, it's after 11, 14, and 16. As you can see in hard, it's 9, 12, 14, and 15. So that's how Seneca is going to be going after those Nero cards. You're going to be getting them the same way you normally would by passing those blue squares on your player board. Okay? So at the end of the game, triggered by the Nero cards as normal, you are going to compare your score with Seneca, okay? And so either after the end of the ninth round or the last Nero card, they're going to get points based upon parks, rubble, roads, and settlements, a number per area, okay? And you're going to score the way you normally would, primarily through your player board and through any Nero cards that you have collected. If you've got more points than Seneca at the end, you win. If not, which is the case frequently with me, you lose. All right, that's just a brief overview. Why don't we head back over and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea on how the solo game of Rome and Roll differs from the multiplayer game. As I mentioned, I didn't give you a high level of detail in that overview. You can look at Tom's review if you wanted to get a little bit more of a detail on how the actions work and the building placement and things along those lines. I was really mostly focusing on things that were specific to the solo game. So First of all, let's talk about some solo benchmarks, things that I like to discuss when assessing the pros and cons of a solo game. The first thing I like to talk about is win conditions. Is there a clear win-loss condition? Are you playing against a virtual opponent? Is it a high score variant, etc.? Roam and roll, you are playing against Seneca, a virtual opponent and a tough one, if I may say so myself. I felt like Seneca was a very challenging opponent. It is one that has variable difficulty. Of course, you can change things up in the game to make it either slightly easier or slightly more difficult, depending on your play level. And in my case, I was very challenged, even on the easy level. Now, as I played it a little bit more, I felt like I was getting a bit better and I could go to the normal mode, but I was not in a position where I felt like I had any chance against the hard mode of Seneca. So it's a game that I felt was presented quite a challenge, and there is a clear win-loss condition at the end of the game. Either you've won or Seneca has won. In my case, usually Seneca has won. The other thing I like to talk about is setup and teardown. And one of the benefits of roll and writes typically is that they are very quick to set up and tear down. Roam and roll is generally the same way. Now, there is a little bit of setup involved with setting up Seneca's deck, but really it's not long at all. It's a quick game. You can get it off the shelf and you can be playing within minutes. That's generally a positive with roll and write games, and it is certainly a positive here with roam and roll. The last thing I like to talk about are rules, and generally speaking, I felt the rules were very clearly laid out, very well written. The solo rules were in a specific area of the rule book towards the end of the book, and I felt like they did a good job of explaining the differences between the multiplayer game and the solo game, and giving you specific examples to kind of give you some clarity where there might have been ambiguity. Certain times there are things that go through priorities, and they clearly laid out what those priorities are. I found very few times where I was playing the game and was wondering, well, what should Seneca be doing here? I thought that they did a very good job of laying things out well in the rules. So, what's my overall solo experience for Roam and Roll? Well, I have said that I feel like Roam and Roll is a mid-weight Euro strategy game that is masquerading as a roll and write. So this is a game that very much feels like a Euro strategy game. Now, the fact that it is roll and write, I think, is interesting. It's novel in the sense that I have not played a roll and write that gives me this level of experience, this depth of strategy. Now, this could potentially be a pro and con. I have a sense that Roam and Roll is a game that I would prefer as a solo game to the multiplayer game. Now, I'm just going to go right on the record right now. I have not played this as a multiplayer game. I have only played it as a solo game. But the reason why I feel like I would prefer it as a solo game is the sense that you've got the shared board there, and I feel like that could potentially be tricky if you're working with other people. I don't know that to be the case because I haven't played it that way. But even just using my pen for me and a different pen for Seneca, there were times where I was worried about marking in the right place and okay, I don't want to rub stuff off. That could be more a user error than anything else. But I do feel like if I was playing with 3 other people, that could potentially be an issue. I don't know. I'm not reviewing the multiplayer game. I'm reviewing the solo game. And I felt like that was something that I didn't have to worry about as much because it was only me. The other thing that makes me think I would prefer this as a solo game is that I really had to think through my turns. I'm not an AP player by nature, I think. I haven't been told I am anyway. But there were times, multiple times when playing this game, that I was really poring over my decisions. And I feel like in a multiplayer game, I would have been maybe a little bit anxious about taking too long on my turns. I enjoyed having the leisure of spending time to puzzle things out, to figure out what I thought was my best move. The thing that's really good about the solo variant in Roam and Roll is that there's not a lot of administration that the player has to do on Seneca's turn. You flip over those cards and it's pretty quick figuring out what Seneca is going to do. It's not hard to figure out what die they're going to draft. And so that is a huge plus to me in this game, is that most of the time playing the solo game was on my turns because I wasn't having to worry as much about what Seneca was going to do. However, I was spending a lot of time on my turns because there's so much to think about. This is not your typical roll and write game where you're going to be drawing a polyomino shape on the board and moving on. There's a lot to consider. There's a lot of interconnecting pieces involved, as you might expect in a midweight Euro, but you might not expect in a typical roll and write game. So I do enjoy Roman Roll quite a bit as a solo game, but I am curious if I would have the same experience as a multiplayer game. All of this being said, I feel like this fits a very particular niche that I did not have in my collection, which is a very quick to set up, very quick to tear down, crunchy midweight Euro. I think one of the reasons why it is so quick to do that is because it is a roll and write. So you have to kind of weigh these things. For me, I think as a solo game, it's a plus. I like having the option to get this thing off the shelf, and within minutes, I'm knee deep in a midweight Euro game. And I just take out a cloth and wipe it off, and I'm done basically in putting it away. That's a huge plus. I don't have, piles of chits and pieces and the setup, because a lot of times in games like this, the setup can be really onerous, and it's just not here. And so that's why as a solo game, I feel like this fits a very particular niche that I did not have in my collection. And it's one that I really do appreciate. So all of that being said, I think that Roman Roll is a really good solo game. It's one that fulfills a niche that I didn't have, and one that I didn't even necessarily know that was going to be attainable. One where you can get a big, chunky, midweight Euro game experience in minutes and be able to put it away in minutes as well. All of that being said, I'm giving the solo game of Roman Roll an 8 and a seal of approval. I really do feel like there's something unique going on here. I don't know if other games are going to come along and try to do the same thing, but this is the first one of its type for me. Thank you so much for your time as always, and have a great day.